Joining me now here on the Knicks Film School pregame show with Victor Wembanyama making his debut at Madison Square Garden on Wednesday night. I went down to the Alamo and found an expert on all things Spurs. He is the host or one of the hosts of Locked On Spurs. He is also a reporter locally in San Antonio for KENS5. Please welcome to the Knicks Film School pregame show, Mr. Jeff Garcia. Jeff, how you doing?
Thank you, Andrew, for that introduction. You forgot adopted New Yorker right there.
That's right. Adopted New Yorker. Yeah. Spent some time recently living in the Big Apple. And
a lot of years.
To make it even more local or more close to home for me, in Queens over at Sunnyside, as we were talking about before the pod. So I know you're not coming to New York for this game, but the connection of New York and San Antonio being in your life, I'm sure you're looking forward to this game a little bit extra.
Yeah. New York holds a special spot in my heart. San Antonio is my native home, born and raised. But as mentioned, New York City is just, I consider it my adopted home. But yes, Victor is in the Big Apple. It's going to be a great game. I know we'll get into specifics in a while right now, but believe it or not, despite having, what possibly or who could possibly be the next generational player for this league, Spurs fans are already upset. I'm not kidding.
Whoa, already upset with what?
They're already upset. Not at Wemby, but at everybody else around him. They're really frustrated by how players, his teammates, don't force feed him the ball. How do you only go to him twice in an overtime game versus Toronto? There's issues with his usage. So after that phenomenal game he had versus Phoenix, that monster performance, his usage rate is starting to decline since that game. So yeah, their fans are already kind of upset already. They want to feed him. They want him, give him the ball, but I don't know if that's just an adjustment period right now, play calling, whatnot. But these are just the growing pains. Victor's going to have to get used to the league. His teammates are going to have to get used to playing a guy like that. You're still seeing players like from Keldon Johnson to Devin Vassell doing chest passes to him. Don't do chest passes. Don't. Just lob it up really high. Yeah. Nobody's going to get him. So you still see that. But, this is just growing pains. I say wait till about after the All-Star break. Then we'll see if they're cooking or not.
So first of all, speaking of lobbing things into Wemby, lobbing the ball in, that probably was my favorite play from the second Suns game when I forget who the guard was, but Wemby's being front faced by Durant. And whoever the guard was just realized, wait, I can just throw it up. Like he was trying to get it to him. It's like, oh no, he's not open. It's like, wait, there's vertical spacing too. And just the realization. And whoever the guard was walked back to the timeout, just like, hey man, that play's open every time if we want. So let's stick here for a second. Are Spurs fans upset with the players for not doing it? Is there any animosity toward the coach for not featuring him? Where's the frustration directed towards?
You said it in the head. All of the above.
Okay, wow.
Coaching. Pop. Why aren't you calling more plays for him? Players. Not giving him the ball. So I'm gonna chalk this up to just 6-7 games in. Okay, fine. We'll see how they are, come midway point of the season. We'll see how Wemby is. We know his trajectory is sky high. He's only going to get better. We know that, but you're seeing the adjustment of him. He looked awful in that second game of a back-to-back versus the Pacers. I mean, the Pacers scored 152 points.
I saw. Yeah.
That's just ridiculous, unacceptable. And Wemby struggled. That was his first NBA back-to-back. I want to see how he adjusts to an 82-game packed NBA schedule. Out in France, it was 3 games a week with a lot of spacing in between. Playoff system in France was not as stringent and the next day, every other day kind of thing. It was spaced out. So we'll see. You're seeing players already getting physical with him. Robert Covington now for the Sixers, when he was with the Clippers, they asked him, hey, so how did you handle Wemby? I just shoved him out of the way. I just shoved him. And you're seeing that every night. He's getting pushed. And, he shouldn't be surprised. There's a big target on his back, a huge target on his back coming into this season. So growing pains, my good friend, growing pains. But, the light at the end of the tunnel is that his potential is out of this world. Alien, he is called the alien.
Right.
And, for me, X's and O's wise on the court, I like to see him stop chucking up so many threes. Really? I know he wants to showcase his diversity. He's made it very clear he is diverse on that floor. He says, "Don't pigeonhole me. I'm not that post in the basket with my back, and I'm going to turn and do something." He wants to show that. But there's some times where I'm like, Lou Dort's on you in the block. What are you doing? Or Dennis Schroeder's on your got it switched up on you. Why are you coming back out to the 3 line? But again, kudos to him. He can knock down those 3. We saw versus Indiana. He had a Steph Curry like 3 deep way beyond the arc. But his evolution continues. What I'm interested in seeing is how he's going to deal with a rookie wall. Every NBA rookie smacks their face into, from Jeremy Sohan to Devin Vassell to some of your rookies out in New York. They're going to run into it. And I want to see that adjustment when that 82 game season catches up to him. And guess who's next on his schedule? It's just Joker or Joel Embiid. Yeah. Some sort of like those kind of things along his way. We know the tools are there. We don't have to dig deep. I always tell Spurs fans, I locked up Spurs, I don't have to go into the numbers. We know what he can do. Keep your eye on how he thrives in the league. How if the league is going to beat him down, if being pulled left and right, and he's doing most of the post game conferences, not all, but a good chunk of them, because he has to service the United States media and the French media. So his sessions are a lot longer than normal. Then Devin Vassell or Zach Collins coming out. Then he's getting pulled for exclusive interviews, and then who knows if we know he'll be at the All-Star game because of the Rising Stars Challenge. But what if he has to play with the West All-Star squad? If he gets to that point, and then we'll see how. That's why I say let's wait till after the All-Star break. Let's see where he is in his rookie development. But Andrew, we got to understand he's a teenager. There's sometimes, Andrew, I'm in that conference room. And I'm like, I'm talking to a teenager, a 19-year-old. So you got to keep that in perspective. His body will come in, he just naturally, we get thicker as we get older. So that'll happen. The training regiment they'll have him doing to help in that department, that'll come. He's just, I think getting Wemby was great, but I always make this a point on Locked On Spurs. The Spurs are not out of the woods yet. They're still a rebuilding team. You got Wemby, yay, congratulations, but you're not out of the woods yet.
Right.
There's a point guard controversy right now in San Antonio. The numbers don't lie. Trey Jones, every time that he's on that court for the Spurs, they flourish. I think he's only had one negative in the plus minus category, one game this year. He's a plus 10, plus 12, plus 8 every time he's on that floor. And guess what? The numbers don't lie. Offensively, Wemby thrives with a point guard next to him. Trey Jones gives him the ball near the block. Jeremy Sohan is the starting point guard for the Spurs, and that's not his natural position. And it shows costly turnovers, just dumb passes. Kudos to Trey Jones. I spoke with him. He said that, hey, he understands where Sohan's going. It's a difficult spot, but he's okay coming off the bench. Sohan is saying, yeah, sometimes it's not going to be pretty. Popovich says Sohan's not Chris Paul. So I don't get that. I think it'll switch. I think if the numbers and the losses, if the numbers reflect positive and the losses start mounting, I think they'll switch it out.
So that was going to be my follow-up to that, as well as I have a couple follow-ups as well. But the point guard controversy between Sohan and Trey Jones, what was the reasoning Pop gave for starting someone that wasn't a natural point guard?
They They experimented with this last season.
Okay.
But many of us took it as we know what they're doing. We know what they're tanking. To get those numbers higher, those odds.
Experimenting, as you said.
Experimenting. Yeah. I was at MSG in that tight game between the Spurs and
Spurs played the Knicks really well last year.
Right. So instead of giving the inbound play the ball to your Doug McDermott's, your Gorgie Dang. I'll take Gorgie Dang. They gave it to a 19-year-old rookie, Jeremy Sohan, to run the play. So, we know what you're doing, Pop. But so I understood that. And then this year, they went with it again. I was surprised the Spurs let go of campaign. They really thought that, fine, Trey Jones off the bench, perfect. But still, you got at least a proven veteran that can run the point guard spot. So they let him go, and they're so thin right now in that department. It's just, technically, Jeremy Sohan, on paper, he's the point guard, and Trey Jones, and that's it. That's all. That's it. They don't really have a floor general. Their floor general is Trey Jones, but he's a bench. So it could just chalk it up to seeing what the Spurs want to see in Sohan. Let's see what he can do. Let's test his mettle kind of thing. It could be also, too, that if they flip it and Trey Jones starts, then who's going to run that second unit? Let's just say the Spurs are up 10, 12 points and Sohan comes off the bench and, there goes the lead. Or, vice versa. We need a spark off the bench as bringing somebody who can steady the troops. So I'm going to be watching that throughout the season. Do the Spurs make a move? I just because you get Wemby doesn't mean everybody else is not untouchable. I really still think that this season, a lot of the players are on audition for the future with Wemby.
Well, so that was going to...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
One of my questions that I had about this season in particular, and some of it does actually apply to the Knicks, in that the Knicks chose not to extend Emmanuel Quickly, their sixth man of the year candidate, their quote unquote backup point guard, who's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. And he's able to come in and play with Jalen Brunson, to spell Jalen Brunson, to honestly fill the shoes of Jalen Brunson amicably whenever Brunson needs a night off, or if Brunson's injured. At least he was able to do that last season. And the thought, at least it's come out from Quickly's camp, is he wants to start games one day. And we've looked around at all the teams with cap space and that may have a point guard availability or a position that's open. And the Spurs are on that list. So the expectations for this season, is it like it's all about Wemby and whatever his development is the most important thing, and the point guard of the future is in the draft? Or, could the Spurs be a landing spot for Emmanuel Quickly? Has his name come up in the Spurs fan? Okay, so not even on the Spurs radar. That's actually going to be a relief to a lot of Knicks fans. So is the point guard of the future on the roster, or are it's another lottery pick that they're aiming for?
I think this season is going to be about Wemby's development. They made it very clear that they're going to let him take his time and adjust. They're not going to rush it. They're not going to rush the process. As far as the point guard position, Trey Jones and whatnot, I think they're invested in him. They gave him a new contract. They extended him out. They gave him a nice pay raise. But the point guard of the future starting, I don't know. A point guard on the roster, yes, I think that's okay. The Spurs have so many options. That's what's awesome about the squad. I'd be shocked if Brian Wright doesn't get some sort of recognition for Executive of the Year, or at least get a lot of votes, because what he has done in recent years. Imagine flipping Thad Young, Drew Eubanks for a first-round pick. Amassing a war chest of picks, and the Spurs still have how much cash to spend?
Ton of cap space,
ton of cap space. So, and guess what? All their contracts are very flippable. So they're not like some crazy James Harden, how are you going to move that deal? Nothing like that. They're manageable. So he's put the Spurs in the right position moving forward with Wemby. So let's just say, up and coming point guard that's already a little bit seasoned in the league, he wants out, or they can pick up the phone and make a deal because they have how many first round picks, how many unprotected first round picks, how many second round picks, how many young guys on the roster that if the right deal presents itself or a player is on their target, they can afford to match any deal or give a team. I'm going to use the Knicks, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you guys got quickly. How would y'all like to have an unprotected first round pick and cash and second round picks? You know what? That's just an example. So they can definitely play with that. But yeah, this point guard spot is going to have to change. It's going to have to change quick because it's just not working. Then if you have Jeremy Sohan just coming down the court and then, I got my ball picked. There goes the ball. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing that. You're seeing a lot of forced passes. And look, credit to him. He's trying. He's not, just floundering out there terribly. I mean, he's getting better. The numbers do show it. I mean, obviously with more practice and more experience, more gameplay, you're going to get it. His assist numbers are decent. They're pretty good. It's just the turnovers are still high. It's just not his natural position. It's just not his natural position.
Which makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Something's going to have to give soon.
With the point guard position, the Knicks a couple of years ago actually chose not to start Emmanuel quickly when Derrick Rose went down, when Kemba Walker just showed that he probably his career had come to an end. And they turned to Alec Burks. I shouldn't say they. Tom Thibodeau turned to Alec Burks as his point guard, which wasn't his natural position. And it created a large consternation amongst the fan base. Ironically, the Alec Burks starting five had a positive net rating. So you could argue it worked, whether it mattered that in a season they won 37 games, the starting five had a good net rating. And with that, it's up for debate. You probably should have just given quickly a look to see if he could play point guard. But I understand from the perspective of a rebuilding team, but more specifically a fan of a rebuilding team, that what you want to see less matters as far as wins and losses.
Yeah.
I guess because you bring up the locker room of it all and how the guys don't necessarily know their long-term futures on this team. So what has the atmosphere in the locker room been? It's been
great.
It's been good. Okay.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, there's the locker room is very lively. The guys are chatting it up. Keldon is just something else. If you've never experienced, if you do to the game tonight or whatever this airs, if you have a chance to go to the Spurs locker room, go, because Keldon Johnson, no matter win or loss,
we don't go into. Unfortunately, we don't have the access into locker room. So tell us, what is Keldon Johnson like?
Yeah, even during the tank season. And even this year in losses, he's coming out full of energy, jokes around with media. He always looks at us, says, "You guys are still here," asking, his teammates, just being a silly guy. He's very silly, very full of energy, always positive. That's one thing I like about this team. This Spurs team, they don't dwell on the past. They move forward, and at least the young players do. They move forward quick. Devin Vassell, kudos to him. He's really taken the mantle of the leader of this team. And in these losses, especially against Toronto and of course against Indiana, you're seeing the loss of him. I've been debating about this, and this comparison should not surprise you considering it's behind me right now. I think as of right now, it's really Devin Vassell, the Batman of the team, and Wemby is the Robin. And I think that's going to flip, obviously, soon.
Interesting. Okay.
Because you see them sputter without Devin. You're losing a 20-plus point score. You're missing defense. You're missing a guy who can knock threes down. You're missing a guy that can take it to the rim. You're missing a guy that, is considered the leader of the team, on that floor. So I obviously this is Wemby's team for the future, and that's that way. But as of this second in time talking with you, Andrew, my opinion is that it's really Devin who's the Batman and Wemby is the Robin for now.
So it's like the Dark Knight Rises version of these characters, where Batman is, well, I guess I don't think Devin Vassell's gonna disappear for 6 months while
he ain't gonna
goes on
that,
lockdown. But to your point, like at the end of that, spoiler alert for a movie that came out in 2012, but at the end of that movie, Robin takes the mantle. So it's got to be an interesting dynamic knowing that while he is a rookie, while he's a teenager, he's also the future of the franchise. And I'm sure that not only matters to the players, but matters to Pop. And I should have led with this. How long have you been covering the Spurs? How long have you been covering Pop?
My best guesstimate is early 2000. So I'm going to say maybe 2000.
My goodness.
2000, yeah.
So then you'd probably be the best person to ask this. Like, I know in the mid 2010s, he went through some personal tragedy, and I know a lot of people outside of San Antonio speculated how much longer he had in the league or wanted to be in the league. Did you sense any like end of the road for him after that happened? And I mean, to those who want to look it up, go look it up. But the fact that this second stroke of lottery luck now hit the Spurs, has that now extended his career, you think?
Yeah, I think it has. I actually thought he would hang it up when he got into the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
I really thought that. I thought, once it was announced, then, what better way to call it a career than you're at the Hall of Fame and then you end it with, and it's been a fun ride or something like that. I mean, chills.
Right.
But, because he's now with the three guys that helped, pretty much did the glory for him, Duncan, Parker, and Manu. So I thought that's the way you go out. You go in with those guys. You go in with Parker. That's Pop's Hall of Fame classmate, and at your side is Manu and Timmy. So sure, why not? But no, obviously the end is coming sooner than many Spurs fans would like. Well, then I go, that's for a whole other story there. Speaking of the Dark Knight, there's sometimes I look at how Spurs fans react to Pop now, and it's that line, you either die young, a hero, or live long enough to be a villain.
Yeah.
Live long to be a villain. And that's what it's kind of turning into right now.
So
like,
even
why don't you play him?
So this is a fascinating dynamic that since I've been doing these pregame pods, because part of the reason I even wanted to start a project like this was, like, I thought Tibbs had quibbles that I had for him. But the venom directed at him was like, okay, does every fan base do this?
That guy had venom right there. Yeah.
Right, literally venom. He's for those who are listening on the pod, Jeff has a venom poster behind him, and that's how it used to be after every game, no matter what the margin was, no matter how the team might have played. It's like fire Tibbs, whatever. Yeah. And I was like, does every fan base do this? No, I have not met a fan base that doesn't do this, that even Pop, a future Hall of Fame,
gets it.
An already Hall of Famer gets this. So interesting.
He gets the business. He definitely does. Spurs fans, not all of them, but there is a big
there's a vocal subset.
A subset that really, really, says, "You're done, Pop. We're done. Just wrap it up already." Bring in the new blood. But no, it's a great transition period for the Spurs. I'm old enough to remember when they first came into the league but for a little history lesson, everybody, Spurs actually came from Dallas. That's their roots, Dallas, Texas. They were called the Dallas Chaparrals. And then that team was floundering. And then they approached some businessmen in San Antonio and they said, do you want to lease our team? And we'll relocate them to San Antonio. So that's how it all happened. And then, hey, San Antonio loves basketball, and away we go. So I've seen these transitions from that to the Gervin era, to the Robinson era, to the Duncan, then the big three. What could have been with Kawhi, and then that bridge with DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge to now Wemby. And let me tell you, the kudos on the Spurs. This may have been the longest ongoing rebuild project I've seen, because Robinson overnight. Remember when Robinson came in, he transformed that franchise overnight. Not kidding. I mean, it's one of the largest, biggest turnarounds in NBA history. Same thing with Duncan. So then the Spurs dip again. Robinson gets hurt. They bottom out. Duncan come out, and then he brings them back up overnight. I think it was like his Duncan's second or third year. They already won a title. It was quick.
It was his second. It was 99.
Yeah, 99.
Well,
you guess your
Knicks
boys.
fans know that year very well because they beat the Knicks in the finals.
Yeah.
You know?
And then now you're seeing Wemby, and I know Spurs fans want him to be that transformational overnight player, and like Duncan and Robinson were. You know, I mean, maybe it could have been Kawhi, you know, if he had stuck around long enough. But I think that's not going to be Wemby's path. Wemby is going to start cooking maybe second year. Yeah, I think that's where we'll see that generational player, because I want to see how he handles an 82-game season. That could be his Achilles heel this year. Not an opposing defender, not scheming defenses. It might be just the NBA schedule.
Yeah. To any Spurs fan that catches this episode and like pushes back on the idea that Wemby can't be that transformative player, or compares him to Duncan, my only thought on it is like, I just made sure I look it up. Duncan had 4 years of college on his belt when he got drafted. And was 21 years old when he got drafted. Yeah,
and Duncan had a ready-made team for him.
Yeah,
that team was ready-made.
That part that the Spurs, it was really a 1 year stop after Robinson went down, and they were like, "Take your time coming back. We have a chance to make some history
to get Timmy." And imagine, Andrew, you get drafted by the Spurs, you're number one, and your teammate is already David Robinson, Sean Elliott, Avery Johnson, became the Dallas head coach.
Jaren Jackson,
Jaren Jackson. That's your team, ready made for you. Same thing with Robinson. Robinson came in with Sean Elliott. Well, not even come in with, but I mean, eventually they teamed up. But Terry Cummings. He had it for a while. Maurice Cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
So Wemby's coming in with a developmental phase of the Spurs franchise. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to transform the franchise overnight. He has in different ways: the spotlight, more national TV games, sold out games, ticket sales. All eyes are on San Antonio. But Andrew, sometimes I forget. I think the media forgets that he plays in San Antonio, because it's like there's Wemby playing. Oh yeah, he plays with the Spurs, but there's Wemby. Wemby. That's what it feels like sometimes. And so, so I think his path will be a little different than TD's and Robinson's, and that's why I think with that cachet they have of picks and money and first rounders, second rounders, flippable contracts, young players that could be enticing in a deal. You can't tell me, I'm making this up, that you guys wouldn't like to have a Devin Vassell.
Believe me. It actually goes back to draft night with Devin Vassell for me. That was the guy I wanted when they took Obi Toppin. I had a combination. No, look, I'm not a
and
draft.
That's so funny. Spurs fans wanted Obi Toppin.
Did they really? So that might have actually been that. There you go. That could have actually worked out. That if both teams had gotten what they wanted, because now there's a fascinating sliding doors moment there where look, I'm not a draft expert, but I remember just looking Devin Vassell seems to be like the comp for him from the experts was Allen Houston. And I was like, okay, like a shooter. The Knicks could probably use a shooter on this roster. Sure. And then they had a second first round pick that year that I wanted them to take Des Bane, and instead they got Emmanuel Quickly, which I love Quick. I wanted the Knicks to extend him. I still want them to match whatever offer he gets. But like, imagine if they had gone Vassell and Bane instead, and they had these two shooters, or if they had gone Halliburton and Bane, and that's their backcourt for the next 20 years. Sure. But this is life in the lottery, where you're taking swings, and maybe look at
Go
ahead.
I was like, look at Portland right now.
Yeah.
If you're Scoot, you're like, ugh. Growing pain. That's all it's for Scoot. Just growing pains.
Which is weird because they've surrounded him with a ton of vets. Like Anthony Simons is there, and Ayton's there. Yeah. And you'd think that that team is a little bit more ready-made. And I from the limited Blazers I've watched, I haven't been crazy impressed. But
it's been bad for Scoot, but hopefully he'll snap out of it. But you look at just Spurs and their trajectory. Obviously, it's sky high right now. You throw in Wemby, it's automatic. Next. Spurs fans are like this. They got a new toy. They're like, when do we win our next title? When do we win our next title? And mind you, keep in mind, this current generation of Spurs fans, that's all they knew is just winning.
Yeah.
So all these kids in their 20s and their early 30s right now, they grew up with titles and parades and deep playoff runs and thrilling games and national TV games. So then they have this 1 year drown out, and then they get Wemby, and they're like, okay, so we're going to go through what we just went through for the last 2 decades. So it's not going to work that way.
There's two comps I think that come up when I hear that. Part of it being local here in New York, Yankee fans don't understand that you're not guaranteed. Well, you're not guaranteed the World Series every year. So, going through how spoiled they were with the late 90s runs, and now you just have to settle for Aaron Judge and best player in baseball and a couple ALCS trips every year. Apologies to all the Knicks fans that I'm talking about baseball.
But by the way, side note, Citi Field is fan experience. Citi Field is better than Yankee Stadium.
You're speaking to my love language right now. I will say,
I'm serious.
The old Yankee Stadium I liked because
old Yankee Stadium was fun.
The history that existed. They're like, oh shoot, like Babe Ruth.
Yeah,
played here. Mickey Mantle hit the legendary home run there. Roger Maris broke the record there. And the new one is a mall. Like it's a tribute to the old Yankee Stadium.
The last time I was at Yankee Stadium, I felt like I was at a golf tournament, like a golf thing, because I think Judge hit like some
golf clap,
some major home run, some historic home run, something like that. And this is all I heard.
Mm-hmm. I will say the Gabagool Yankee fan does exist. Like every time I've been there, don't you dare wear an opposing hat. But I do agree with you. It does seem like you're going to an event rather than a game.
So. That's what I miss about the old Yankee Stadium. But no, Citi Field, man, that's fun. That's just a fun experience.
Home away from home, believe me,
it is. But circling back to the Spurs game,
I have another comp that I wanted to use because like the Yankee one is like growing up, experiencing winning, and then not having that sustained winning anymore can be an adjustment. What the Patriots are going through right now, where they're garbage. They're 2-7, but there's like a ton. There's at least 2 very good quarterback prospects. So could the Patriots get lucky, get the number 1 pick, get the number 2 pick, nail the quarterback, and then it's like, great, we're back to winning. Similar to how the Spurs are at the moment, where fans like we got Wemby, good. We're the 1 seed every year again, right? Is that a fair comp that I'm making? That's a
very fair comp. And look, I get the anxiousness, the hype around Wemby and what he can do for not just for the San Antonio Spurs, but for the league. And you feed into that hype. But I always say let's calm down. Like after Wemby had that phenomenal game versus the Suns, right on lockdown Spurs the next day, I'm like, great, good job, Wemby, but that's just a first step. Because prior to that game, this is what his games are like. Quiet for periods 1 through 3, and then explosion in the fourth. Quiet for periods 1 through 3, explosion in the fourth. That's fine. It's fine. He's one of the better clutch statistically players right now in the league. But for me, I need to see sustained consistency from periods 1 through 4. You got that versus Phoenix. Can he do it again? And so far, he has not, done that. So I like to see a little bit more consistency out of him. I like to see his teammates give him the ball more. For a 19-year-old, he demands the ball. You can see him like, I'm right here. I got Andrew Claudio defending me right now. What give me the ball.
Throw it up. Just live it up.
Just throw it up. And they don't. They're like, Keldon's like chest pass and the pick. Sohan bounce pass and a pick. So just it'll be fine, Spurs fans. It'll be fine. Hopefully tonight the Spurs and Knicks put on the show though, because I would love to see Wemby have a phenomenal game in the Mecca.
So let me ask you, going into this matchup as a Knicks fan, should I expect them to run the offense somewhat through him, knowing what putting on a show in the Mecca could potentially mean?
Oh man, I hope so. I hope so. I just want to see MSG fans get a treat. Obviously, you guys want to win, but to see Wemby do what he did in Phoenix, redo that tonight or whenever the show goes out.
Up this morning, yeah.
Up this morning,
this airs 12 hours before tip off, so you're good.
All right. So, I think what we're going to see tonight is a lot more Wemby touches. I just don't know what he'll do with that because he's a very centered player. But I spoke with French media and they say sometimes he can get very emotional. So he takes wins. He takes wins with a grain of salt, but he takes the losses a little harder. So I think if he wants to erase that bad taste in his mouth, and not only from him personally for how he played versus Indiana, but for the team collectively. So I think he'll come out looking to drop some numbers at the Garden, but the Spurs got to feed him, man. I mean, you're good. Look, you're guaranteed to at least get 2 plays where you're like, whoa, how did a 7'5" guy do that? That's happening during the last few games. How did he shoot how did a 7'5" shoot a deep Steph Curry 3? Not even near the 3 line, just near the logo. He did that versus Indiana. Then there's how does a 7'5" guy do a Dr. J style rock the baby underneath the basket, drop and in for the bucket? I mean, he's done that already. Then you get those moments where he just puts a player on a poster. He did that quite a few times already. I think he did that to a Heat player in preseason. That moment went viral. Did you see that?
Yeah,
that Heat
and
player
he
looked
just
at the
looked
bench
up like, what am I supposed to do here?
What am I supposed to do?
What is anybody supposed to do with this? Yeah.
Yeah. So Knicks fans will be entertained throughout tonight. But if the Spurs are up big, don't think the game is over. Because they've shown that they can blow leads. They blew a lead versus
I watched
Phoenix.
The Phoenix game. I also watched the end of the Raptor game. So
they blew the lead against the Raptors. So they're trending that way. But the other bad trend, especially for Spurs fans, is that if you punch this team in the mouth fast, they might crumble. That's what Indiana did. They just punched them in the mouth quick. And then boom, they were like discombobulated. They were, what do we do? What do we do? And but it's a sign of a young team that's still growing.
Yeah, a lot of. It's not as what it used to be especially when you had kids coming out after their senior year. That there is a lot of growing pains that exist, and I think that's what Knicks fans are learning. That may have written off like an RJ Barrett or a Mitchell Robinson in their earlier in their career during some of their struggles, and now they're reaping the benefits of 2 players that are really coming into their own in their 5th and 6th years and starting to perform. And that leads to my last question. And I kind of want to turn it over to you and ask your thoughts on the Knicks. And if you have any questions about the Knicks going into this match.
Yeah. My thoughts on the Knicks. First of all, shout out Knicks. Miss seeing you guys out at the Garden. I like where they're going. The trajectory seems to be going. Julius Randle, just doing Julius Randle things, putting up numbers,
got off to a bit of a rough start. I will say, like a historically bad rough start. And then what the difference one game makes, and now everybody's like, oh, Julius is back. Remember how ridiculous it was,
I'm wondering how the whole Fournier thing goes. That's what I'm wondering about. He's very vocal about his minutes and playing time.
It's funny. Here's what I'll say about Fournier. And I know that there was a lot of talk, at least from what we were hearing this offseason, that the Spurs would be a perfect trade partner for Fournier.
And he made it very clear, too, that he
wanted to go be with Wemby. Exactly. Especially after the time he spent in France with Wemby. I know they didn't play together in FIBA, but he's he knows this player. So the Knicks signed Fournier 2 years ago, and he played the entire season. He was their starting 2, and he was part of that Alec Burks starting lineup that had a positive net rating. But there was a very clear trend that the Knicks were better when Quentin Grimes was on the floor, when Emmanuel quickly played the 2, just when there were other options. The way they were able to justify Fournier, though, was when he was shooting 40% from 3, which he did the entire first season. The next year, which was last season, Fournier shot like 35% from three for most of his first 20 or so games, and the Knicks were losing. And the lineup data was just like every single lineup that involves him is not good. And Tibbs eventually made the switch to be like, I'm going to go in a different direction. This is just what's best for the team. And the Knicks took off once Quentin Grimes became the starting two, once Emmanuel quickly became both the backup point guard and the closing two. And then you add in the trade for Josh Hart. Like they have so many wings on this roster that are better options on both sides of the court. There was a moment over the last couple. The Knicks got off to an uncanny poor start shooting the 3-point ball. They were second in the sport in open looks from three. So 4 to 6 feet closest defender, right? They were second only to the Warriors, like the gold standard for offensive creation, right? And they were last in 3-point percentage. So it was like, maybe you should just give Fournier a look if this gets to 10 or 12 games in the start.
Yeah, what do you got to lose? Yeah.
And then yesterday they shot 38% from three and ran the Clippers off the court. So once regression happened, the formula for what makes the Knicks work, which is intensity on both sides of the court. Unfortunately, Fournier just is an odd man out here. Yeah, I think if they could find a home for him, they would have already. I do think that there is a trade to be made that will send Fournier elsewhere. We've seen this with other players. Obi Toppin wanted more minutes, went to another team. Now he's starting for Indiana. Cam Reddish wanted a bigger role, went to Portland first, started for them, and now he's like playing 40 minutes a night with the Lakers. So I do think there is a path for Fournier. I empathize with his situation. I haven't like pushed back against any of the things he said vocally because he's trying to save his career. It's just factual in the data that the Knicks are better when he doesn't play. It's just an unfortunate situation. Yeah.
Well, hopefully that'll clear up for you guys, but I'm looking forward to a great game. Wish I was at MSG to watch it, but I'll definitely check out the Knicks when they're in San Antonio. That's for sure. So, I'm just looking forward to seeing Wemby. I've only seen him. I'm not going to the game. I'm just like, I've only seen him play. I've only seen him play like other teams, and now knowing how the Knicks play, and this Mitchell Robinson has 45 offensive rebounds right now. The next closest has like 27. I think it's Oscar Thompson in Detroit. So I'm curious to see what Wemby looks like against a very physical big that's off to a great season start. Me too.
There's the Julius Randle impact. Julius struggles against rim protection and probably the purest sign of rim protection right now.
Yeah, it's just Wemby. Yeah.
But Julius is also a bit of a bowling ball when he gets downhill. So I'm curious, like, if he's able to create some space against a 19-year-old in Wemby.
I think he'll be able to. Yeah. The right now, the physicality, he's getting used to that right now.
Yeah, but I'm also curious about this matchup more than anything, and you'll appreciate this as someone who has an affection for New York. As the great Frank Sinatra says, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So if Wemby comes in and puts on a show in his first trip to the Garden, then that's a moment that people will keep talking about. And I hope he puts on a show and the Knicks end up with a victory. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me on today's show. I appreciate it.
I'm hoping for a show too and a Spurs victory.
Yes, of course you are. Of course you are. Before you get out of here, tell everybody where they can find Locked On Spurs and anything else you want to plug.
Yeah, for sure. Locked On Spurs, pick a platform. We are there from YouTube, from the Kens 5 Plus app to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. The list goes on and on. We got a lot of great guests that come on. A lot of good people come on. We're starting to really dive into the numbers now that our sample size is getting larger every game. We're starting to see trends, things with Wemby. So if you want all things Wembanyama, go to Locked On Spurs, and we appreciate you subscribing.
Of course. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, sir.